What's going on today, you guys? Today we're talking about 5 books that have changed my life in one way or another. Let's get right into them. Alright, you guys, so this list is in no particular order. All 5 of these books have changed my life in one way or another. So the first one right off the bat is Creative Calling by Chase Jarvis. And this was a book that actually just came out just about a month ago now. And Chase Jarvis is a world-renowned action sports photographer. He talks about his journey to get to where he is now, and it's really incredible. He pretty much came from nothing. It's one of those type of stories, and he talks about how to develop a daily practice, how to pursue what you really want to do, how to get out of a job that you might not like being in at the moment. So one of the most important things he talks about in this book is teaching yourself how to learn. And he teaches himself how to learn actually through going through college as a doctor. He figures out this is not his creative calling, that being a doctor is not what he wants to do, and that his creative calling in fact is actually being an action sports photographer, which is something he has relatively no experience in. And he is able to basically teach himself all on his own how to become an action sports photographer, and this was basically through no schooling. He taught himself how to do this. So he talks about how to teach yourself how to teach yourself, if that makes any sense. Teaching yourself how to learn for yourself, rather than going to a school or having someone that can teach you or basically spoon feed you. He also talks about how to truly be yourself, how to build an audience. He talks about his experiences of almost dying and just how important creativity is in our culture, and how we sometimes neglect this, and this is an absolute must read. I really recommend it. It just came out. So go get Creative Calling by Chase Jarvis. So next up is probably the book that has impacted me the most out of any book I've ever read, and it's The Dip by Seth Godin. And I've talked about this book a lot on this channel, but it's just an absolutely incredible book. It changed how I think about playing music, how I think about my calling as a person. And the main idea of this book is that basically anything that is worth doing takes an excruciating amount of hard work. So the main premise of this book is something he calls the dip that starts out right here, it goes down, and it has a really long slog in the middle, and it ends up coming back up on the other side. And basically what this means is when you start out doing something, pretend you're starting out playing drums. You're gonna have this really fun time learning how to play all the basics of drums. You're gonna say, wow, I love being a drummer, all this different stuff, and you're gonna have this big surge of dopamine at probably the first few weeks of you playing drums. And then all of a sudden, you hit this big dip where it starts to become really hard, where drums start to become really difficult. You have to learn all the basics, and it's gonna take a really long time before you can come out on the other side and be one of the best in the world at what you do. So this book basically talks about how to become the best in the world at whatever you want to do. And this applies greatly to me because I really want to be one of the best in the world at what I do. And this is a really humbling way to look at this, and that there's basically no shortcuts. You just have to do the hard work and be able to come out on the other side somehow. Seth Godin says that many people quit when things get really hard, but in fact that is the time that you really need to stick. And often this is when everybody decides to leave. When things get really hard practicing an instrument, a lot of people start to leave. That's like usually right after high school. People stop playing their instrument entirely and pursue a different path that they might see as easier or an easier route to success. So I highly, highly recommend The Dip by Seth Godin. So the next book on this list is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F*** by Mark Manson. And this is a really funny title on this book, but this is actually a really, really powerful book as well. This book talks about why you should not be giving a fuck about everything, why you should have your priorities very straight, and decide the very few things that you are going to give a fuck about, because there is an absolute anxiety and depression epidemic going on in our world right now. And the way to get out of this is by choosing very few things to actually give a fuck about, and really, really give a fuck about these few things, and not care about every little monotonous thing in our life, not hold on to the person that flipped you off while driving to work, not care about one person that told you you suck at the drums or whatever. These little things can totally weigh you down if that's all you're thinking about, and if you're giving a shit about every little tiny thing somebody says to you. So that's the basic premise of this book, and once again, it's an incredible story of how he got to where he was. So that's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Next up is a really interesting and different book called Daily Rituals: How Artists Work by Mason Currey. This book is a compilation of many of the greatest artists of all time's daily rituals. So it has people like Bach, Beethoven, Louis Armstrong, let's see who else, Steve Reich, George Gershwin, Ernest Hemingway, Strauss. There's probably like 100 different artists that are on here that have all of their different daily rituals, and you're going to be incredibly surprised at how regimented many of these people were and just the sheer amount of hard work that each of these people put in every single day. Many of these people were doing their art all day or had a super regimented schedule to figure out how they could get their art in every single day. So yeah, this is a really interesting book to get into the minds of many of the greatest artists of all time, and this is called Daily Rituals by Mason Currey. Lastly, but certainly not least, one of the other books I've read pretty recently is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. So this book is all about how success is really heavily reliant on community and circumstances. So he argues that basically hard work is a given in any of the most successful people in the world. All of them have put in their 10,000 hours. He talks about this 10,000 hour rule all the time and how you need to put in 10,000 hours to be able to become a master at any certain thing. So one of the really cool examples he has in this book is his example of Bill Gates, one of the richest people in the world and one of the most successful people in the world, who started Microsoft, and of course you know who he is. Bill Gates had a circumstance where he was able to go to a private school with one of the only computers in the entire country that allowed someone to program all day. At any college in the country at this time, you basically would only be able to program for about an hour a day. You would have time limits on computers, and there would be these massive mainframes with operators that you would have to bring your programs to. And where Bill Gates was, this was one of the only places, especially for a kid of his age, in the world that he was able to program for 8 to 10 hours a day. He was able to get in his 10,000 hours at a really young age, and this put him way ahead of many other people at his time. So he was way ahead of everybody when the computer revolution hit, and he was basically there at the perfect time, and his hard work and circumstances aligned him in order to be one of the most successful people in the world. So once again, this book is called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. So yeah, all of these books are total perspective changers and are really great for musicians or whatever type of artist or person you are in general. I think these books are basically good for any person, not even just artists. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and if you have any questions about any of these books, let me know in the comments down below. And if you're enjoying this video, I'd really appreciate it if you go down below and check out some of my other videos. And if you're enjoying those, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. I have weekly videos coming out, and yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much, and I hope you have a great day.